Hello friends, thank you for joining me today on what? Day what of our coronavirus exciting life. Peace and health to you all. We're good at my house, which is a real blessing and one we don't take for granted. And once again, I'm going to try to get all my monitors up and running. Give me just one moment. I discovered yesterday that I was on the wrong. There, we're good today. I have so I have quite a number of devices up and running, as you can imagine, still on this rather new experiment of trying to broadcast on both YouTube and Facebook at the same time. 2 cameras, 2 controller phones, and 2 monitors. That's 6 devices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, not counting sound and the extra whatever you call it, Wi-Fi, personal Wi-Fi. Anyway, you didn't turn into hear all of my problems, I know. So I am finally down to come on, let's go. I see Facebook people watching. Thank you, welcome. And I'm just gonna try. There we go. All right, I have a monitor already with you Facebook people, so I can say hi and greet you appropriately. That is very exciting. You know, let me turn down my monitor so we don't get feedback. Hello, Vincent. Hello, Jeremy. Wonderful. Oh, now it says it was interrupted. Come on. All right, let's get official and legal. This is Daily Art Adventure number 864. That is exactly correct. I have done 864. This is 864 Daily Art Adventures. Woohoo! Marching our way slowly toward 1,000. When I started this 3 years ago, I thought, by the time I get to 1,000, I should be good. All right, let's talk about what I'm doing here. This, as you can see, is a picture of a bride named Jessica. She lives in Greenville. She and her husband actually knew some of our kids in college. Knew David and Dorothy in college at ECU, so that's kind of exciting, kind of fun. I don't know them. And let me show you what I've done then with all of my... Hello, Uncle 60. Yeah, I need 2 Dan Nelsons. More than 2 Wi-Fi separate devices. I've got a little, I don't know what you call it, a small Verizon MiFi thing, and then our house system too. All right, so I'm working on 5 portraits, and just a few minutes ago I took time to take a photograph of each of my paintings. Get this? With my camera phone, click, shooting my painting. Then in my camera, I flopped it mirror image and then emailed it to myself, emailed it to my computer, and printed it out on my computer. So are you with me? So this is the picture that I've been going by. Let's zoom in here. That's the picture that I've been painting from for the last couple of days, and as you can see, I hope, let me bring you in just for a second, bring you in really close so you can see that, the painting up really close. Bear with me just a second. There we go. So there's what Jessica looks like. Here's the photograph that I've been working from. If I back out just a little bit, you might be able to see both at the same time. Hang on just a second. When I come in this close to my 2 cameras, I'm not quite exactly tracking. Close. All right. But I have over here, again, bear with me, I'll be there in a second. I have over here a mirror image. So that's the important concept. And for any of you who perhaps happen to be early journey portrait painters, I mean, I'll call myself a mid-journey portrait painter, okay? I'm a little bit beyond beginner, but I'm by no means master by any means. That's part of the reason I'm doing this, is so that I get better. All right, now here's the point. You don't have to use your camera, take a picture of your painting, and flop it in your camera. You can do the same thing by picking up your painting and holding it in front of a mirror and looking at a mirror image. Now, I hope in fact, any painting would benefit. It doesn't have to be a portrait, but as we all know, the tolerances for portraiture are the most stringent. No, Uncle, 136 to go. 864, not 964. Not like you to make math mistakes like that. All right. You've heard me talk, if you've been watching, about portrait blindness. After staring at a painting you're painting a whole bunch of times, you can't see your mistakes anymore. So listen to this. You must. And when I was taking a painting class from one of the big dog I've mentioned before, Daniel Green, portrait painters, he did this too. He had a handheld mirror and he'd look at his portrait in a mirror. That is what you must do. So essentially with technology, our phones, our cameras, I'm doing the same thing here. So all of a sudden when I look at this, I'm seeing things that I didn't see over here. And let me just pick up a small pointer. I'm noticing that her mouth, when I see it now in mirror image, it seems a little tiny bit crooked, like this is too low and this is too high. So over here I have to go the other way around and say, oh my goodness, and now I can see it. Do you understand? Whoops, we just lost our sound. Hang on. Let's figure out what happened here. Hang on. And I don't know. Okay, hang on, bear with me. We lost our Facebook friends. Oh no. Okay, YouTube people. Bear with me just a minute. I'm going to try to pick up our Facebook friends. It gets quite complicated because I have two cameras and two phones, and their wires get crossed, so to speak. So if I can't pick up Facebook again in just a few minutes, then we're just going to drop our Facebook friends, which would make me very, nope, it's not letting me do it. In other words, let me just tell you, in order to bring Facebook back in, I need to turn everything off. Boom, reboot everything. Cameras, phones, monitors, everything, and reboot everything. So I'm going to leave a comment over here in my on my Facebook page. Sorry, bear with me just a minute. Oh, that's sad. It makes me feel sad because we get a lot of people watching on Facebook. All right, sad to say. I won't even try to explain to you guys why that is, but trust me, it is. All right, back to the image. So now my eye sees, wait a minute, that smile looks a little crooked, too low on this side, too high. And I didn't see it over here, but now, and I've lost my in-ear monitor, of course. Let's see if I can, no, I can't get that reattached. So I'll just use, I'll use external monitor. All right, sorry for the problems. Now that I see it over here, then the question is, can my brain translate over here, and can I still see my mistake? And the good news is, I can still see the error of my ways, if you will. This side of her mouth seems a little high, and the other side seems a little low. So I am concerned that broadcasting at this level of fussiness may turn out to be dreadfully boring. I could bring you guys in as close as I can. That's about as close as I can get in. A little bit too light of a color, too bright of a color. By the way, let me point you at my palette just for a second. I have cleaned my palette off, of course, many times during this 5-portrait process. But pretty much, this is a very, it's not organized. The OCD person in me has gone on vacation, thank goodness. But it's very, very helpful because I just keep mixing, except for this area, which was for background. All of these are flesh tones, right? All these are flesh tones, except for that. And I'll until I find it just difficult to work with, I just keep a messy palette. A quick word of explanation, in case you don't know. Every evening, I finished painting about 10 o'clock last night, and my palette here goes straight to the freezer down in the garage. So that when I come back today, my paints are mostly still viable, still good. All right, so I have successfully brought that end of her mouth down. Now, according to my notes, quote unquote, according to my looking at the mirror image, which is here, according to that, the other corner of her mouth needs to come up a little bit. Now, let me see if I still believe that, so to speak. And yes, I do. I do indeed. Now that I look at it, so I'm mixing up. I don't have that color, that lip color mixed up already, so mixing up. It's a very dark red. Look at the photograph, the original photograph, to make sure I'm still, yeah, there we go, there we go. This, by the way, all this kind of brush, holding it this way, ask me. Yes, it drives me crazy. Are you kidding? Yeah, I've often wondered, how would John Singer Sargent, I've asked this in my painters group, how would John Singer Sargent paint a portrait this size? And well, most of the chorus that I got back from my fellow painters was, he wouldn't. He would never do it. But I'm still, be that as it may, I mean, I mean, good grief. Like I like to say, people use my name and John Singer Sargent's name in the same sentence all the time. The sentence is, well, he sure ain't no John Singer Sargent. That's for sure. I know, you regulars, you get tired of these same jokes over and over and over. But hey, I'm not tired of them, so I just keep saying them. To tell you the truth, I heard that joke in about 1991. It was actually said by Kyle Rote Jr. Now, there's a name for some of you, Kyle Rote Jr. And any of you old people remember who that was. So the year was like 1991, right? 92, 93, right in there somewhere. And Kyle Rote was like the first big American name in soccer, what the rest of the world calls football. His was the first big name in soccer. And he was actually speaking at our church. He was very, very funny. And he made that joke. He said people use his name and Pele's name in the same sentence all the time. And he said he sure ain't no Pele. I thought it was funny because I've repeated it the essence of that joke many times since. I just noticed, by the way, there's a little bit of color in her glass rims here, a little bit of gold. So I'm adding that. Yeah, that looks nice. All right, let's go back to my reverse image here. In this painting, it's clear that her eyes are diverted slightly to the right, which means in the painting, her eyes are diverted slightly to the left. And the question is, am I happy with that? Because in the original photograph, I actually, in Photoshop, over here, the original photograph, in Photoshop, I actually straightened her eyeballs so that they were looking straight at us. But I have failed to, reflect that in the painting. But as a matter of fact, I really do like it better. So in a sense, I'm going back to what the original photograph originally had. She's looking slightly not at the viewer. She's looking just at the viewer, at our left shoulder. And I actually like that quite well. Okay, now back to, again, I'm almost finished here. Her nostrils, let's look at her photo. Yeah, her nostrils are quite symmetrical. And they need to come closer together. And dang, so small. Oh, wait. Oh, good. Here we go. I should have done this earlier. Sorry. So on the back of, this is her full image. On the back, I've got a blown up. I should have had this side out the whole time because I'm down to details. All right. So the shape of her nose, the shape of her nostril is, yeah, the nostril is a classic, invert arch, a U shape, shallow U, upside down, and they're close enough to symmetrical that I don't have to mess with them. But I do think, compared to my painting, they need to be a little closer together. So let's see if I can do that. I'm going to paint here with my left hand. Which is something I don't usually do. I don't usually do the death control grip with my left hand. Here's a good, let me zoom back in, sorry you guys. Here's a good tip. One worth noting, if I do say so myself, and I do. The old rule, the old adage, darks first, lights last. Yes, absolutely does apply to portraiture. So one of the applications of that principle is anytime you put dark on a portrait, then you're not done with the portrait because you must follow through with light. And that is certainly the case right here. I did that dark nostril, and it just comes off as too prominent, too dominant. What other words do you want to use that rhyme with prominent and dominant? It's too stark. So, in fact, this is getting serious. I actually, if you want to see Grandpa Nelson at the height of his nerdiness, well, this is it. two pairs of glasses at the same time. So that I can see what the heck. Oh man, it makes such a difference. Ooh. This, as you know, as you well know, this is a very small portrait. It's a standard for me live wedding painting, and that's a complaint, which means very, very, very small. In fact, just to give you a literal, I know you can see it, but let's just find out how big is her head, cut off the top of her veil. 2¼ inches. So just for reference, 2¼ inches is a dang small portrait. I mean, 1/100th of an inch can make or break a portrait of this size. Now that I'm looking up close, I'm thinking, well, I can fix a whole bunch of stuff while I'm up this close on it. Okay, back to my mirror image. Is there anything else over here that bothers me? Oh, doggone it, there is. It's amazing what you can see. Her glasses over here are too wide, over here they're too narrow. So I don't have her glasses even. Well, let's fix which one is right and which one is wrong. Dang. I was hoping that would be an easy answer, but it's not. Which one is, well, something else clearly is erroneous, but I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to, what I'm saying, if I lengthen her glasses over here, then they'll be intersecting with her hair, or very close, I should say her temple, which it's not doing in the photograph, but I'm just not going to worry about it because it's close enough. Usually you can't get away with, close enough mistakes in a portrait, but this is one of those rare mistakes where I think, okay, moving there. Now her glasses at least, not quite the right color there, hang on, at least her glasses now are, her frames are symmetrical. And I'm going to do just a tiny bit over here and give the impression of her lens coming in a little bit. That will help too. All right, let's back to looking at my mirror image. Am I okay? No, well, almost. Very, very small detail. Her hair actually comes down on over this eye just a little bit more. There. Plus that little detail, just get, a little bit of I don't know what the word is, chic, a little bit of. It looks cool with her hair coming down like that. So I don't want to de-exaggerate it. If anything, I want to push that feature just a little bit. I don't think I've pushed it, but I don't want to be lagging behind. She's got sort of a style with her hair coming down. I don't want to cheat her style by making it short, is what I'm trying to say. A little bit of shadow under this strap. I'm going to do one thing that is maybe reflected in the photograph. I'm not sure, but even if it wasn't, I want to punch up the sparkle in her earring just a little bit. All right, I think I'm going to call that done, ladies and gentlemen. So one portrait finished. Let's see what you guys are saying. Nailing that girl. Susan, thank you very much. You said I'm mailing her, and I thought, what? Oh, nailing her. Thank you. Oh, Uncle 60. No, that is that clove oil trick I heard that from Mark Carter as well. Clove oil on a cotton ball, is that right? On your sealed palette. Oh, yeah. I haven't done that, but I do remember. That's one of those things like, yeah, dang, I should do that. All right, let me back you guys up for just a minute and say, okay, I think I'm done with her. A couple comments. Wait a minute. There's a little smudge right in the right there that I want to unsmudge. A couple comments about this portrait and about the photograph, actually. This is a photo clearly taken with a flash. All right, and you can see that. I mean, it's everywhere. It turns out I have learned, because several times over the years I've done, send me a photo, and then I'll say not a flash photo. I don't say that anymore because it turns out the general population doesn't know what that means. They just don't. People do not understand. What do you mean? I don't know, and they can't see it. So I've let go of that stipulation. But now in this case, the client here had no choice. They sent me. Evidently, it looks to me that they did not hire a professional photographer for their wedding, which is a bit of a surprise, because I think everybody does that typically. But anyway, so it was not a professional photograph. In this photograph, the bride had her arm around a friend, and so on. So this is a composition of, actually this one is a combination of 4 different photographs that I put together in Photoshop, and as I said, took the red out of her eyes. I did a whole bunch of stuff. Spent about 2 hours editing this photo in Photoshop. But I want to point out, again, for anybody aspiring, I don't have any choice. I have to go with what I've got. But you could tell it's a flash because the lightest parts of her face are the parts that are pointing straight at the viewer. The brow ridge there, the space between her eyes, flash on the frame of her glasses, right on the point of her nose, point of her cheeks, point of her lips, point of her chin. Everything that's pointing straight at the viewer has, boom, a highlight. And even her neck, you can see in the neck here, it's very bright because that's pointed, curved straight at us, and I diminish that. Anyway, my point is you don't really have any choice. You can't, you could try to invent light and make up what isn't there. I've tried that in the past, and maybe John Singer Sargent could do it, but I sure can't. Be that as it may, I'm quite happy with the portrait. It's really sharp. But at this size, I feel like that's the best alternative, is to make it uber sharp. I think that's all you can do. In other words, again, it's a little bit like an illustration, and because again, at this size, I don't think you have any choice. But anyway, it was interesting and kind of fun. Wait a minute, I'm seeing now there's a little tiny smudge on her nose that I'm not happy with. And what I'm talking about here is literally the cracks in the canvas. Do you know what I mean? Oh, that was a piece of debris on her nose. Good. It came off when I rubbed it. Anyway, doing a portrait, in my opinion, doing a portrait at this size just comes with a whole unique set of problems. But I'm quite happy with that portrait. Let me bring you around. You can see it straight on just for a minute. And I will probably mess around with the background just a little bit more, but not much, and I'll sign it, and I'll be done. All right, 1 out of 5 finished. Woohoo! I'll put that aside. Where should we go from there? All right, let's do the one that's right on the board already. Let's find, all right, so here is my, I guess I can just put it here. Here's my mirror image of this cute little guy. Once again, this is a mirror image. And boy, am I glad I did this. And this is standard operating procedure for me. Whoops, ladies and gentlemen. It's just that normally I do all of this on my phone. When I'm out live painting at a wedding, I pull up this image on my phone and reverse it. But because I'm here in my studio, I have the luxury of printing it out. So I've done it so that you can see what's going on. All right, I see all kinds of things here that I didn't see earlier. First of all, I already knew something was wrong with the mouse. I just couldn't figure out what it was. Let me grab a pen and start making a few notes. Let's see. By the way, these these cute and rather childish little pens that we all got when we were kids at some point, you know, but never really used. I'm finding it really helpful here in my art studio of all things. All right. Okay, number one, this needs to come down. I can label that number one. Number two, this part of the lip needs to go up, so that I'm going to call that two. What else is weird over here? Well, I didn't even finish the ear, but I would have done that anyway. But I'm going to go ahead and label that number three just to finish the ear. Now these eyes. The baby has this classic thing going on with baby's eyes at this stage of development. You know, almost looks a little bit cross-eyed because the lid of this eye hugs it so tight. It's just the rate at which the eyeballs grow. Do you see what I mean? And I've indicated that here adequately, but something's not. I'm going to bring this down. That's right there. This eye. I know what's wrong right here. The top of this eye needs to go up. So, by the way, I draw a circle around it and then an arrow. That means the direction needs to move. Same thing here. I did a circle around this lip and then an arrow going this way, which means that lip needs to go up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, I mean, all of this writing it down, you know, just part of my OCD type personality. No, not D. I'm obsessive compulsive. I do try to draw a line at disorder, but I am definitely OC in personality. Let's look at this. By the way, this picture I just printed off. It's a little too dark. Yeah, I think this crease should move just a tiny bit, and like a 64th of an inch maybe, that way. And don't forget, everything I'm looking at here, I need to flop mirror when I go over here. Let's look at this eyelid. Does not look good here. Oh yeah, I'm missing. Oh, I'm gonna have to make a note here. This is number 6. And what I have to do is add shelf, my language. Add the shelf of the top eyelid. While we're here, just for fun, since I use that terminology, let me grab a piece of scrap paper. I have produced no end of scrap paper in the course of these 5 portraits, but let me draw a quick diagram of an eyeball. Not a very good one, you understand. That's not the point. All right? Okay, there's an eye. The shelf of the eye, the shelf of the eyelid, the bottom eyelid, usually the shelf is right here. That's what I call the shelf. It extends out from the eyeball. It's the pale, very light pink tissue. We can almost always see the bottom shelf right there. But in this baby's eye, right there. Can you see that? You can actually see the shelf of her upper eyelid. So that's right here, and it's a little tiny sliver of light, and I don't have that over here at all. So, and actually it needs to be accentuated. I'm gonna call this on both eyes. Actually, I need to add that shelf, and that will really add a degree of realism, similitude. That's a a likeness issue that I'm missing. Now let's look at the nose. Oh yeah, the right nostril, which is over here, the left nostril is too arched. So arrow down. I'm calling this number 7. Now let's look at this looks a little arched. It is indeed. Whoa, okay. Number 7 is both nostrils. I've got them a little bit too arched. They're supposed to be more level. By the way, I mentioned this yesterday. Hang on, let's look at her chin. His chin. I think it's a his. I don't really know. Oh yeah, I'm going to shave off just a little bit there. And I'm all the way up to number 8 already, and that might be a good place to pause. Let's just start doing some painting. I had a funny little revelation, and I need to move you guys now so that I have room to paint. Had a funny little revelation a couple days ago. Our adult children were visiting. You know what? Forgive me here. I need to move this easel down a little bit. This is a nice easel. It's called the Carolinian, distributed by Jerry's, and it's quite practical. I've modified it just a little bit, and I like it. Although, of course, like most, unless you get into a really fancy easel, it doesn't go up and down like with the touch of a finger, like like my big fancy easel does. So I have to take a minute and loosen things. But again, generally speaking, I'm quite happy with this easel. It was not very expensive. I think $125, $130, $140, maybe something like that, which is pretty cheap, in my opinion. Pretty cheap for an easel. So it's lower down, so I don't have to get quite such the crick in my neck. All right, so now it's simply a matter of following my directions. Number 1, yes, indeed, bring that eyelid down. I'm going to do something I do occasionally. I've got a medium dull knife, pocket knife in my pocket. Nope, that's not good enough. By the way, do you know that old, I don't know if you guys have heard this, it's like a carpenter's rule of thumb or carpenter's wisdom that a dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp one. I'm going to modify, I have modified that bit of wisdom just for what it's worth, and it applies to us artists, because there are many times as an artist that I in fact do want a dull knife. So here's the truth. It doesn't matter if your knife is dull or sharp in your pocket or whatever knife you're using. A dull knife is not more dangerous than a sharp one. What is important is that you're aware of whether that knife in your pocket, so to speak, is sharp or dull. Because if you start using a dull knife as if it was sharp, then it's dangerous. But if you start using a sharp knife as if it were dull, you're also in trouble. So what I've just done is I was afraid there was a little bit of impasto, a little bit of a ridge on that eyelid, and that if I didn't scratch it off, all the painting in the world of repainting of this eyeball would be for naught, because you would still be able to see that tiny little ridge of paint. Does that make sense? So that might look like desperate, or brave or something thing to do, but as you can see, we can see you know, a little bit of the sparkle of the canvas showing through. Now, while I'm making all of these repairs, if you will, while I'm making these adjustments, it is imperative that I continue to look at the original photograph, which is over here. You know, I look at this one to get my notes made, to get my corrections. Does that make sense? But when I'm making the corrections, I don't look at that, I look at this, right? I'm comparing what I'm painting now to the original photograph. And by the way, I don't know if any of you had the chance to see yesterday's broadcast. I called it Moving On, the full title would have been Moving On to the Cheating Phase of Portraits. And that is a continuation of the conversation that we had the day before, where I talked about start, at least for me, and what I recommend, start your portraits, all your paintings, whether it's a portrait or whatever, start without any cheating whatsoever. Don't grid, if you can help it. Don't grid, don't project, don't measure. Just try to do it the old-fashioned, third grade artist way. Everybody in third grade thinks a person is an artist who can draw perfectly out of their head or by looking at something. That's not really true, but start out that way so that you're exercising, growing your powers of your skills of observation. And then after that, then you launch into, if you will, the cheating phase. Whoops, that's the wrong color. Because of course again, whether you're doing it as a hobby and you just want to get better, or as I am doing it, if you're doing it for money, I mean, good grief, you cannot afford to let a painting go out the door that is not satisfactory. I'm assuming I don't have to explain that very hard. It has to be accurate. So I employed on this particular boy's face, again, I think it's a boy. That's coming out a little bit too light. I employed quite a radical cheat because of all the 5 portraits that I started several days ago, this was the one that I was missing it the most. And this is the one that I was not happy with the likeness. I was missing it. So I employed quite a radical cheat on this particular portrait. And part of the point I want to make, and this is what some of you artists, you understand, and this is why some artists protest against me using the term cheating, because even after cheating, guess what? You're still not done. Cheating, there's virtually no form of cheating that you're still not left with a whole bunch of corrections to do. By the way, you'll notice on a portrait this size, I am using a terrible death control grip. But at least I'm not using a Winsor Newton Series 7 brush. Does that make sense to you? At least I'm using a brush that is leaves somewhat abstract marks. Now I'm holding the brush in a proper manner. Now I've left my notes behind right at the moment. Now I'm just painting by looking. Paint by look. You've heard of paint by number. This is paint by looking. This is what we all aspire to do, isn't it? That's better. All right, I'll come back and do that. I think there'll be another whole phase on several of these portraits that I'll call finishing touches. I didn't even want to call this this go around as finishing touches, as you saw by my title on YouTube. I forget what I called it, but I'm approaching finishing touches, but I'm not even there yet. Not even there yet. And clearly, I see now when I set this portrait down yesterday, I hadn't even bothered trying to perfect all the subtle flesh tone reflections. So I'm doing some of that right now. I mentioned a few days ago, I'll repeat it again, I'll repeat it here. For some strange reason, I have improved in my portrait painting in the past year, even though I haven't done very many portraits. I don't know, just I grew an extra brain cell, something clicked into place, and when I look at good painters' portraits now, I'm discerning better than I have ever before about what they're doing that I hadn't been doing up until now. And in a word, it is subtle variation of value, which is what I'm doing right now. But I'm not done. All right, I'm going to put that aside because I'm just having too much fun. But for some reason in the past year, that's what I've picked up on. When I look at a really good portrait, there's so many of them out there. I'm seeing that my portraits heretofore have been a little bit too flat. Sometimes enough value range, but not enough in between every single value. A face is just an absolute infinite number of values, tones, infinite, depending on how fine you want to measure it. That's literally true. All right, let's get on to number 2. All right, boy, I'm really glad to see this one because I knew something was wrong when I've been looking at this photograph. I said, man, something's wrong with my mouth, but I couldn't figure out what it was. As soon as I took the printed out the reverse, the mirror image, I went, oh, that right there, that just comes down too far. So that's an easy fix. And so number 2 and number 5 are going to be down here. So let's fix those right away. Again, my palette here in front of me that I'm not showing you is just a mess, a glorious mess, a happy mess of flesh tones, all kinds of flesh tones. So it's, but I find myself, of course, still having to custom mix each color. All right, have I got the right color? Yeah, close enough. All right, now one thing I have learned, another thing I've learned about my portraits in the last year, I have tended to render the edges too sharp. And that's actually happening right now. I've got that bottom lip in the right place, but it doesn't look right simply because it's too sharp, too crisp. So I'm mixing up some red-ish lip flesh tone. By the way, now here's another thing I've learned in the last several years, not recently. Let me move you over here. I hope you can see this. I'll bring you in as close as I can just for a minute, so maybe you can see the color. And this is, I think, a fairly good representative. But the color of the lip, bottom lip, right here. What color is that? Now, I don't know if you can see it. It's dark, almost a maroonish red over here. A pale, warm pink here in the top lip. But this over here actually has a touch of purple in it. And I've been surprised over the years how much cool tone, cool being purple in this case, how much cool tone there is in lips. I would have thought that lips would most naturally be warm. They're warm, you understand? They're red. But in the red spectrum, they tend toward a coolish, a purplish, or a magenta-ish red. I've got too much paint on this tiny brush. That's all, just a surprise. Like, wow, there's a lot more purple or cool red in lips than I would have thought. And forgive me, I'm gonna. Okay, wait a minute. This would be a good time to do another quick demo teaching. Learned this again from Mark Carter, C-A-R-D-E-R. He's a way better artist than I am. This is, as you can see, laminated in plastic. The reason for that is so that I can put a daub of paint right there. And if I cannot see the daub of paint, then I've got the right color. And indeed, that was just about dead on. So that's what lets me know that I can apply this stroke right here. Isn't that a good trick? Now, again, part of the reason I'm doing this is because I want to soften. I'm changing the color of the lip ever so slightly. But even more than that, I want to soften that edge. Especially on a baby, it doesn't do to have these sharp, sharp edges, even around the lips. Right? It comes off. Same thing up here. I need to change the top lip now that I'm paying attention. So honestly, when I did this painting yesterday, I just got it close and then abandoned it because I was getting portrait blind. I just got the major strokes close, and then I moved on to other things. And now I'm seeing how much that is true because there. Whoops, I missed. Sorry, I forgot to move you guys back. You didn't miss much. Same thing. I've got a bit of an outline on his top lip, which is quite inappropriate. Quite inappropriate, right? Same thing over here. And now let's correct the other side. So one thing leads to another here. In other words, I might have felt that this portrait was kind of close to correct, but I'm now seeing that it wasn't. Okay, whoops, let me move you down. So I'm trying to match this color right there. And I'm assuming you can see those strokes, which means I'm off by a mile, right? It needs to be bluer and paler. So I'm going to pick up some ultramarine blue and some titanium white. And let's try that again. Okay, I hope I'll remember to move you back to the painting. But right now, all I'm trying to do is match this color right here. Oh! Off by a country mile. Again, even more blue. Wow, that's amazing how much blue is in that. More blue. Now, I think I've over-blued it. Yes, but I'm closer than I was, so that's good. Let's clean off that. Now I think some oxide red in that mixture will be just about perfect. Let's try that. Okay, how am I doing now? Ooh, much closer, but a little bit more oxide red. When I can't see the stroke anymore, you guys probably can't see that. If I put it here, that's virtually invisible. So I don't want to use this brush now that I've done all my mixing with that brush. It's like, no. All right, back to the face that is the subject. So I hope, does that make sense to you, the Mark Carter trick? I'm sure probably other people use it as well. You print out your painting and you laminate it. Now, again, I hate coming across sometimes, I know I do, like Mr. You gotta have tons of equipment to be an artist. You don't have to have a printer. I mean, a laminator, you can go down to your local Office Max, Office Depot, Staples, whatever, and get it laminated. But I will tell you that okay, hang on just a minute. I need to think. I think I got mine on Amazon for about $120 or maybe $100. Not, in other words, my point being, not very much. And who'd have thunk that an artist would need a laminator, laminating machine? But I have used the heck out of that thing in the last 2 years or so. I've been amazed how much benefit I've gotten from it. Here's not only can you use it like this to match color, but as you know, when you print a picture off a typical cheap bubble jet inkjet printer like mine is, the colors are soft and subdued because this is a matte finish. But when you laminate it, boom, the colors. So this looks more like photo paper. It's not. It's just regular paper, but with the glossy finish. So there again, and it's a lot cheaper actually. A lot cheaper to use laminated, I think, cheaper than using photo paper, which is quite expensive. I use that too. I have photo paper here. All right, so I'm doing a little. Oh, that looks much better. Never use your fingers. I say that every time I use fingers. Let's check while I'm over here. Let's check the color of the shadow under his nose. Oh, perfect. See, when you put a stroke down and you literally can't see it, bingo, then you know you've hit it. I mentioned this little trick a couple days ago, the matching stuff, and I also mentioned that some of my fellow early journey portrait painters that hang out with me at various and sundry places, for some reason you're going to use the word refuse, which it's not. For some reason it seems there's a resistance to doing this, and I do not understand that. I do not understand that when somebody shows you a really good trick. And especially when they show you that it's a trick you need. I don't know why you don't do it. And maybe I'm sure I'm being something. All right, let's whew. One thing's just leading to another here, isn't it? Just one thing leading to another. I'm still not finished with that corner of his mouth. But let's come back over to this part. Whoa, way too dark. Just about out of I only have one pile of titanium white left. When I put titanium white out on my palette, I typically, maybe you've seen this before, I typically put out 4, 5, 6 piles of white so they don't get cross-contaminated. Let me see what you guys are talking about. Hello, the Crane. Good to have you on board. Thank you for speaking up. I appreciate that. All right, I'm trying to match that color, and it's way too, can you see it? It's way too chroma. So I need to gray it down. My favorite gray it down color is, as you may know, all you regulars know, is raw umber. But then it'll be too dark, so I've added raw umber and then titanium white. Let's check it out now. See how close I am now to this color. I'm trying to get this little arc of light right there. Let's see where I'm at. Ooh, wow, very close. Hallelujah. So just to add a little bit of titanium to that pile, and I should be good. Our eye, I tell you, I mean, there's, I don't know how you can be an artist and not be in awe of something, creation. I'm in awe in two ways. I'm in awe of how well my eyes work, that my eyes can discern literally millions of colors. Think about it. Millions of shades. And then when you're this close into painting somebody's face, it's just, now I find myself needing that shaded color. Yeah, close enough. Because this is not supposed to be a hard edge right here, right? A hard edge would be a big mistake. And now all of a sudden, for some reason, I'm feeling like this chin is too short, which that shouldn't be. I'm going to go with my intuition, even though I'm kind of, because I used measuring devices, I used measuring tricks to get the length of the chin, but I know what's going on now too. So it may be too short, but I just discovered that it's too short over here, and I didn't measure this part. Whoops, it's the wrong color. Hang on. Way too orange. There we go. Oh my goodness, that's huge. So I just cut out some of that little reverse curve in his chin. Again, I'm assuming this is a his. I've heard, ironically, turns out I know the grandparents. Turns out I know the grandparents of these babies. I didn't know that till they contacted me and said, "Oh, you're doing your grandchildren." That was great fun. And the names are Jefferson and JJ. And if either James or Jamie or Jenny or the grandparents are watching, please let me know which name. It's Jefferson and JJ, and JJ could be a girl or a boy. If any of you are watching, please do let me know. I'd rather use their names than, baby girl. Wow. So, one thing just leads to another. One thing just leads to another. Here we go. Now I need to make the light on this top lip much stronger. Again, on this particular baby, and I think this is JJ, but I'm not sure. I need to. I'll be coming back and doing a whole dedicated finishing touches, because I'm discovering it's way too raw, rough, unfinished as it is right now. So let me go ahead and put the reflection back in this top lip. Bottom lip. On the top of the bottom lip is why that came out that way. On the top of this lip. Whoops. In case you miss my final broadcast on these 5 portraits, let me tell you what, probably, with possibly the exception of the bride, but maybe even that one, possible exception there. One of the last things I will do on most of these portraits is I will sargentize them. Bear with me. What that means is until I'm as good as John Singer Sargent, which won't happen on this side of the grave, probably. Until I'm as good as him, I can't do what he did, but I can cheat, and this is what I call sargentizing my portraits, and I've done this fairly often. What I mean by that is, after all, everything is accurate. Every line is, the likeness is perfect. The values and tones and everything is correct. I will come back and mess it up just a little bit so that it doesn't look like I painted it the way you see me painting it here. so that it doesn't look quite so stressed over, quite so contrived, quite so overworked. I'll just come in at the very end and do a few slightly bolder brush strokes. So it looks a little bit more like a John Singer Sargent portrait. And I know you could say, well, that's cheesy. Guilty as charged. Just call me Cheesy Portrait Nelson. Until I'm as good as I want to be, I'm going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to employ techniques to make me look like I'm better than I am. Whew. All right, I'm done now with number 2 and 5. Number 3, is this whole ear, which of course I just never even tackled last time around. Let me explain again why did I abandon this portrait at such an unfinished stage of development, if I can call it that. Are you ready? Does that make sense? Why did I quit when clearly there was so much that is not finished, not correct? The answer is because I could feel the ever dreaded creeping portrait blindness coming upon me. And if I continued to paint, I would grow more and more and more blind to all of the issues. And so I've learned, that's why there's such an advantage of doing more than one portrait at a time. So I just put this one down, picked up another one, and kept on painting. Still being productive, but not productive on this particular painting. Now that I've come back today, I'm seeing, besides my reverse photograph, which at the moment I'm not paying any attention to at all, I'm just seeing a whole bunch of things that are quote-unquote wrong. Now, this is a kind of wrongness, if you will, that comes with no shame or embarrassment. Do you understand? I'm not even embarrassed that I got these things wrong. Sometimes, by the way, when people are critiquing me, as I'm doing the portrait, sometimes I just have to roll my eyes because sometimes. Now, you're welcome to make critiques, you are. But I don't pay much attention to a lot of them because I'm just not there yet. I'm just, thank you very much. I haven't even started focusing on that issue, that part of the, that part of the physiology yet, that part of the portrait yet. There's a little bit of hair right now, and I got some really cute hair that comes out here. It's wrong color, but it'll do for now. All right. Let's go on, do the numbers now. Number 3, okay, number 4. Ooh, this eye over here, which is, this one. Needs to be slightly higher. The top of the eye needs to be slightly higher. So clearly that is a nearly black. Right. If there's going to be any black in a portrait, it will be in the pupil and in the shadow underneath the eyelashes right above the pupil, if there's going to be any black at all. Now, it's pretty dangerous to let your brush dip into black paint at all. By the way, I do have black paint on my palette. And oh, believe me, all you early journey painters, hold your breath, because I know if you have had a good art teacher anywhere in your journey, that art teacher almost certainly said, don't use black, right? That is the conventional wisdom, and it is wisdom. But there's a big but. Of course, the big but is every rule can be broken, right? So you need to know that, first of all. Know the rule. In this case, the rule is don't use black. Because if you don't know the rule, you're probably just screwing up. And but every rule can be broken, and the rule is broken. I can even tell you when to break it. The answer is when there's a mitigating or countervening rule, when there's some other principle that overrides the rule. So here it is. The rule is don't use black, and that's a good rule. There is, however, a countervening rule, which is, unless, of course, you're painting an object that is black. Now hang on, you early journey painters, don't say yippee and start slapping your brush into that black pile of black paint. No. The rule still is don't use black. But, and I've learned this, I've learned this mostly because I've done so many wedding portraits where I'm painting grooms with black tuxes. Now, so here's another portrait that I'm working on. Right, I'll be working on it later. This is our friend Kim Coley, just won a primary for Republican House of Representatives in North Carolina. She's wearing a dark gray jacket, but in the shadow parts of her jacket, I used black. Because, even though it's not black, I used some in there. So that's the proper use of black, is, in a word, when you're painting black stuff. Like when, so I've discovered in painting grooms in their first dance, you can go and see see these at my weddingpainter.com. My new website is weddingpainter.com. Isn't that great? And little by little, my left hand is getting fuller and fuller of brushes. This is the way it goes, right? And then of course I'm doing all my painting with just my right hand, which I do not enjoy, and at some point the irritation factor will override the practicality of it. Now, throw these brushes down and force myself to, but I'm not there yet, so I'm just going to keep painting. Right color? Yep. So basically, I'm making the baby's eyeball larger over here. It is amazing to me, absolutely amazing, astounding, the sensitivity that we human beings have to the placement of the edge of an iris to the white of the eye, the relationship between. By the way, I do have a tiny bit of black and other things, not pure black, but I have black on my brush right now. That's part of the reason why that subject came up. But you have to be very careful because it's really easy to overdo it. The sensitivity that we have to the location, the placement, if you will. And by the way, I'm painting eyelashes right now, not by painting individual eyelashes, but by using a messy brush, a bristle brush, to make a slight mess, right? A dark mess instead of dark. I might paint one or two eyelashes, but even that is a maybe. Anyway, I was saying the placement of this edge of irises is just absolutely astonishing, and you don't realize how sensitive, again, human beings are to it until you're trying to do a portrait. I mean, literally, it can be off 1/100th of an inch, and the location of it and the angle of it, and we spent our entire lives looking into other people's eyes, and we can tell exactly where they're looking. It's amazing, amazing. So when you're doing a portrait, again, I mean, 1/100th of an inch easily can skew the sense of where those eyes are pointing. Okay, I think I did okay, that's right. There was one more step. You know what? I do want to put these brushes down. Okay, I guess I'll use my handy dandy brush holder over here. All right, now the shelf in both of these eyes. Let me see if I can bring you guys. I described a little while ago what I meant by shelf. Let me zoom in here as close as I can, see if you can see it. Okay, it's this little tiny sliver of light flesh color. Now we can often the shelf of the bottom eyelid is often the lightest, brightest part of a human eye. Often. It's not in this case. The highlight, the reflection is brighter, and in this eye, the white of the eye is brighter. Be careful of the whites of the eyes. Look at how dark this is. That's a real common mistake for early journey. But anyway, in this case, we can see the shelf of both eyelids ever so slightly. And so that's what I want to try to capture right now. I don't have that indicated really at all. On this. First of all, what color is it? Well, it's a very, I can see it's a very neutral flesh, tan, beige, not too pink. It's such a fine line. So of course I have no choice but to use, even though I'd rather not. Again, I don't know how John Singer Sargent would indicate this. Because look at me, I'm using this horrible death control grip. Leave that for the moment. Let's see if that works. And over here. No. Let's just smear out this end of it a little bit. Same thing over here. Make it smaller. It's too pronounced on both eyes, so I'm going to skinify it. I'm going to skinny it up by painting black, or not by dark, right up to that light colored mark. See, oh, that might be about right now. And as I said, maybe a couple eyelashes over here. All right, I'm going to leave it for now just because it's going to drive me crazy. So let's move on. That was number 4. Number 5 I already did. Number 6, no, that was number 6, add shelves. Number 7, okay, the nose, that's right. The nostrils. In both cases, on both sides of the nose, I have them a little bit too arched, a little bit too sharp, steep, a little bit too gabled, if you will, like a gable on a house. And they need to be leveled out. And indeed, they're quite dark, but it would be a real mistake even to make it as dark as it is there. Trust me, I've made that mistake many times. Your eye says, yeah, but it is essentially black. Look how dark it is. But if you paint it that way, what you're doing is you're following a photograph. And what you're doing is following the badness of a photograph, right? If you don't know this, by the way, same thing with landscapes. A camera over contrasts everything. Whites get blown out. That's the photography term. Whites turn white, too white, and darks turn too black. So a photograph camera pushes in both ends. When in reality, real life, we see much more the midtones. So I do not want to make the mistake of painting this nostril the way it looks in this photograph, which is virtually black. So I'm going to make it dark reddish brown. Okay, now tell me, class. Here I am, and again, look at this horrible death control grip. I mean, truly, and you regulars know this is That kind of stuff is what I usually rail against. The rule is never hold your brush in that depth control grip, right? That's the rule, right? Every rule can be broken. What is the mitigating rule here? Well, the mitigating rule is, oh, wait a minute. When you're doing portraits, that rule might need to be mollified a little bit. Did you get it? So is uncomfortable. And again, you know, I would use the name John Singer Sargent. Did he paint this way? Heck no. That's because he was a god among men, and I am a mere mortal. It's good to know where you fit in, you know. and I could point to scores of living portrait painters who are so much better than I am. I mean, again, part of the fun, if you will, of living is knowing where, not making pretenses, not trying to pretend you're something you're not. That would be a mistake. So if you turned in to see a world-class portrait painter, you'd be sorely disappointed. If, however, you want to watch somebody who's on the journey, probably a little ahead of where you are, just guessing, and is able to verbalize. I feel like that's my skill, if you will, is I'm able to put into words. And some of you, this is the best portrait class you've ever had, because I'm putting into words what other people who are perhaps better than I am, they're better, but not some of them aren't able to express what they're doing. And that's the case in every field of human endeavor. Not everyone who does can teach what they do. I experienced this and remember so clearly 40 years ago when I took voice lessons in grad school, of all things. I started out in my undergrad as a music major, not voice, but you know, as a part of a music major, you should be able to produce a halfway decent tone, and that about describes me, halfway decent. That's about where I landed. But anyway, I took voice lessons one semester from this. So I was in my early mid-20s, and he was in his maybe early 30s, and he was a phenomenal singer. Well, that was his problem. He was a phenomenal singer, and I developed a strong realization after a full semester of him. The guy couldn't teach his way out of a paper sack, and the reason was he'd never had any of the problems that I clearly had as a struggling wannabe singer. So he had a really hard time relating to all my mistakes. And I know this primarily because the next semester I had voice lessons from another teacher whose personality I did not like nearly as well. My first semester teacher he was a good friend. I mean, he was the kind of person I would like to hang out with. Second semester, not so much, but the second semester was a masterful teacher. It's like, oh, why didn't my guy tell me this last semester? Oh, it's because he didn't know, because he was a bad teacher. Anyway, so I'm making the correlation here. The same is true with teaching art. And forgive me if it sounds like I'm being self-aggrandizing. I don't think I am. I think I have a fairly realistic appraisal of where I fit in many respects in the world. And I've already told you I'm not that great of a portrait painter, but I'm a pretty good teacher, I think. So, and I'm not begging for a compliment, nor am I begging for a troll response either. So, you trollish creatures, you can just keep it. I will block you. I'm getting more and more free with the block button in my Instagram, in my social media. I don't need negative people in my world. You can keep it in yours. I don't need you in mine. Bless your little heart. I haven't blocked anybody on YouTube, by the way, in a long time, in case you're wondering. In case you wonder why what's his name is gone. No, I didn't block him. And I jest. I don't know who what's his name is. All right. I got the top of the top lip came up too high. Boy, I'm glad I saw that one. I mean, I would have seen it later. I'm glad I saw it right now. goodness, isn't this a fussy business? Really, honestly, isn't this a fussy business? My goodness, whoever said portraits? Oh, I know, I started to tell you a while ago, I started to give you a report and then I interrupted myself. Squirrel, as I so often do. My adult children were visiting with some friends of theirs several evenings ago. And somehow the subject of me, the artist, Dad, the artist, came up and around the table. And the friends, and I'm not saying this to cast dispersions on anybody, it was a moment of revelation to me. My daughter, 37-year-old daughter, was sort of describing, if you will, my personality and basically how hard I work, how intensely I work at being an artist. And the friends were quite surprised because, and the term, I don't know if they used the term, I think they did, but they thought being an artist was kind of like being Bob Ross. And it was just a hang loose, zen-y, hippie, drone-ish kind of meditative state, like happy little nose, happy little forehead, and it dawned on them, my daughter and me later, that that's what a lot of people think being an artist is like. And as you can see, if nothing else, I hope I'm serving as a whatever to the rest of the world. Gang, I'm busting my buns here. I'm working really hard, and you don't get this as bad as it is, quote unquote. You don't get this by doing a Bob Ross thing. and the people that I've been talking about, like John Singer Sargent. How come he's so much better than I am, or how come the old Chinese guys in Manhattan that are just insanely good? Why are they so good? Oh, because they do it every day, all day, every day for 50 years. That's why they're so good. Anyway, I rant. More than necessary, no doubt. But I have observed, and I'm just wandering here, I don't know if this will turn into a rant, but I have observed, and this is a little bit of a sobering, again, I don't want to come off in any way arrogant, but I have observed this. I'll put it in the positive, first of all. I've observed that human beings, mixing up a reddish orange right now to go inside a nostril. Human beings who achieve a very high degree of mastery in any field of human endeavor those particular human beings often recognize mastery in other fields of human endeavor. Whereas human beings, the great mass of people who do not achieve a real high degree of mastery in any field of human endeavor, also don't recognize mastery in hang on, I just saw some orange here. By the way, I'm off book, so to speak. I'm not using this right now. I'm just looking at the photograph over here and painting what I see. Again, much more both tonal gradation than I have up to this point, and much more color gradation, much more variety of color in needs to be in this painting, than more color than I've got right now. So, for instance, just a little more red in this ear. Anyway, yeah, I have notes. Okay, let's get back to notes. 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, in the bottom of the chin. Yeah, I'm very. And this is the end of the list. Is number 8 is the bottom of the chin, and I think all I need to do there now, because I already messed with it a little bit a while ago, out of order. But I've got a little bit too much of a bump right here. There we go. Now, let's look at this little guy. Doggone it. I was really hoping I'd go perfect, but I'm not. I'm not going, oh, perfect. I've got this eye, it looks a little bit too alarmed. A little bit too much caffeine in this eyeball. And I know exactly what's wrong with it. It's open a little too wide. There we go. And again, probably 1/100th of an inch there. I just moved that line down, literally 1/100th of an inch. It's just a hair's breadth, literally a hair's breadth. Ooh, I just learned a good trick for rendering eyelashes. After you put the dark lines down for the eyelashes, they will be too pronounced. They'll look too stark. So after making the dark marks, come back and just the way you do sky holes in a tree, you do the dark leaves first, then you come back and do the light blue sky coming between the leaves. And that makes a much more finished look. Same thing here with eyelashes. Do the lashes and then come back and negative paint the space, the flesh tone between the lashes. There's a little tiny reflection that I haven't done yet. Don't know when I was planning to do it. In the corner of this eye. Here. Not a same reflection, but similar. Whoa, it's too much, it's too much. And maybe this is the last thing I'm going to do. I'm beginning to get tired of this face, getting tired of this portrait, and developing, again, the dreaded portrait blindness. Can't see my mistakes anymore. So it's just about time for me to move on. But before I do, I want to get a little bit of the sparkle in the blue eyes here. And I don't mean the sparkle. I'm talking about the iris, the blue highlights in the iris. Beautiful little eyes here. All right, I am just tired enough of this face, and I'm droning on forever. Hello, some person. You're exactly right. That's a good assessment. We go from, thank you, Barbara, you're sweet. We go from, as we develop competency, are you familiar with this grid? Upper left quadrant is unconsciously incompetent. You're bad at something, you don't even know how bad you are. Then you begin to learn and you become you become aware of how bad you are at something. And then after working and practicing, you move down and you become consciously competent. You're good at it, but you have to think about it. And then after you get so good, you go to the last quadrant, which is unconsciously competent. And that's what some person just described. and that is true in pretty much every field of human endeavor. Like a golf swing, and I'm not a golfer, so there's no risk of being arrogant. I do know though that progress would apply. You go from not knowing how bad you are, not knowing how much you don't know. You go from that to being aware of how bad you are, and you go from that. All right, do I want to do this? No. Let's take a break from baby boys. Hey, real quickly, let's take a big break. I'm going to sit down for a few minutes. I love painting standing up. I really do. Until the pain outrides the benefit of standing, and then it's time to sit down. So here we go. This is Chewy. And yes, I even printed out Chewy backwards. Where is he, she? He, she, it? I don't know if it's he. Chewy is a he or a she. I'm fairly happy with the progress thus far on the dog. This is Chewy backwards. Let me pull up Chewy frontwards. There it is. Again, I don't know if it's he or she, Chewy. Maybe she's trans. That was a joke. It's probably not very funny. My heart sincerely goes out to all people with any kind of sexual identity or gender identity issues, because no matter how much they march in the street, I know that a bunch of pain precipitated their marching. So that's what I do know. All right, let's look and see if I see anything here in the well, I realized last night when I was just wrapping up, I realized that I think, well, let's do a measure here. Let's do a measure. I think that my muzzle is slightly too long, but let's find out. So here's a proportioner. First of all, I line up center of pupil to center of pupil. All right? Then I turn it over and come up here and push in the dial so that this wheel doesn't turn, that screw doesn't turn, and I do center pupil to center pupil here. It's a nifty device. It's very similar to proportional dividers. The problem is with proportional dividers, you have to start out the painting using this because you only have, a coarse number of options. I don't know if that made sense to you, but this, on the other hand, can do, if you will, an infinite range of options. Let me double check my measurements here. So according to my estimation, center of pupil to center of pupil should be right there, and this should be likewise. Yep. All right. Now I'm going to compare as if there was a straight line running right across between the eyes. Let's say I feel like the best measurement will be. Hang on to here just a second. I'm actually going to write on my. I'm going to draw a straight line between the two pupils right there, and a straight line between the center of the nostrils right there. Right? So that's what I'm going to measure. I can't draw on the painting, of course. I could put tape down on the painting if I had to, but I think I can get by without that. Okay, now here's the okay, so there's the photograph side. According to this should be the distance from the line between the eyes to the center of the nostril. Oh, hot dog. Whew. according to that, I'm exactly right on. That's a great relief, because I must have just been playing tricks with my brain. I thought that I had the muzzle just slightly too long, but evidently I don't. No, sorry, you guys might have missed some of that. Sorry about that. Anything else I see? I do. This eye is a tiny bit too large. Now listen to me. When you're doing portraits, many times what you think the problem is not actually the problem. Okay, for instance, I thought this was too long, but it's not. It may be that I've got it too narrow. Let's look at that. Ooh, yes sirree, Bubba. Good. This line right here needs to come out a little bit. See? And this one too. There you go. Let this be a lesson to me. Let this be a lesson to everybody. It's just the thing I was about to talk about. Many times in portraits, what you think is the problem is not the problem, and that's exactly what I couldn't have made that up. I couldn't have made that come up, better for teaching purposes if I had tried. But that's exactly what happened. I thought the muzzle was a tiny bit too long, when in actuality, and partly with the help of this reverse photograph, well, partly just logically, when I thought it was too long, turns out it wasn't, then the next thing, well, maybe it's too skinny, and that's exactly what is the case. And now the question is, can I now see the difference between this and the photograph? And the answer is bingo, yes I can. Woo! So that's an easy fix. Move out this line, move out that line. Now, let's get back to the other thing. This eye feels, and again, I'm getting this more from the reverse photograph, feels a tiny bit too large. And again, many times that's not the case. I don't want to repaint that whole eye. It wouldn't be that big a job if I actually had to. But I honestly don't think I have to paint the whole eye. And here's why. I think I can probably, there's the top, I'm going to call it eyelid, even though it's not an eyelid, but the bit of fur here, orange fur. If I bring it down a tiny bit more over the eye, then it has the effect of making that eye appear slightly smaller, which is what I want. And I think if I can just carve it slightly smaller. No, I can't do that. I can do this though, make it smaller over here. And that feels right to me. All right, let's move on to the big discovery. What a relief. Whew. I was not looking forward to possibly having to repaint the whole muzzle. Ugh. I mean, I've talked about that before. It's not quite as bad a job as it sounds. Once you've rendered something satisfactorily, like I'm happy with the nose, once you've done that, moving it is not quite as difficult as it sounds, and I've gone over that, how to do that many times. So I'm not going to repeat that here, especially since I'm not doing it. But basically, you just start at one edge, at the near edge, and move it step by step by step in a very logical fashion. That was clear as mud. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to leave it just like that. All right. So I'm moving these two edges, that line and that line right there, and probably that will satisfy. That will take care of the what felt like a mistake earlier. Was actually a different mistake than it felt like. It was not. I measured it. The muzzle was exactly right on. But it turns out it was a tiny bit too narrow. Boy, so let me repeat that. Many times when you're doing portraits, and this is true, again, not to be negative or put off people sending me corrective comments. You're welcome to do that, please. But don't be surprised if I don't agree with you or do what you say, because I know that for me, many times what I think is the problem is actually not the problem. It's something else. It's a related issue. Boy, that is a lesson now. I learned that I began to learn that decades ago as a young person, that mistake. All right, here's another correction. So basically, I don't have too much to do on this precious little dog portrait, and I'm delighted, by the way. If you want me to do your pet for $350, my coronavirus special is still in operation, folks. I've got 3 more portraits that they're ready to start, maybe later today, maybe tomorrow. And I would like a couple more, because I would like to do more than 3 portraits at one time. I would rather do 5. For those of you who missed that discussion a couple days ago, let me let you in on a really important tip trick for doing portraits. Whew. Okay, hang on just a second. Let's start painting like a real painter here for a minute. And the trick is, it turns out, and I do not think I am unique in this in any regard, turns out you can do several portraits at one time better, faster, more accurately than you can one portrait at a time. And it's because the biggest obstacle, in my opinion, to overcome in the rendering of accurate portraits is what I call portrait blindness. That after a certain number of minutes, and it's not hours, it's merely minutes, after a certain number of minutes of staring at your work, at your subject, I don't need this anymore, so let me take that down. You have served your purpose, thank you very much. After several minutes, and the number's like 15, 20, 25 minutes of staring at your portrait, you're blind. You become more and more and more, progressively more blind the longer you work at it. And so you become less efficient. And of course, one of the tricks you employ is the mirror image, which you can either do with a real mirror or with a camera, either one. So doing more than one portrait at a time allows you to work on a portrait for just a fairly short amount of time, 15, 20, 25 minutes. And then you put it aside, go work on another one, and when you come back an hour later, after having worked on 2, 3, or 4 other portraits, one time I did this, 10 portraits in one day, and probably the most efficient portrait work I've ever done in my life. That was about 8 years ago. So when you come back to the first portrait, the one that we're in consideration, you find your portrait blindness essentially alleviated. It's all gone. It's the same as sleeping on it. And I think all artists have experienced the benefit, the principle of sleeping on a painting. I'm assuming everybody who's ever painted has had that experience. You work on a painting typically for hours, and you run out of time, you set it aside, you come back the next day, and you slap your forehead and you go, golly! Most of the time, you think, what was I thinking, right? Can I get a witness? Somebody go, yeah, that's exactly right. Because, again, portrait blindness doesn't just afflict portrait painters. It's the most exacerbated in portraiture, but it applies to any kind of painting whatsoever. So when you come back after sleeping on it, you have fresh eyes. So this trick, if you will, of doing several portraits at the same time is just that, a really handy trick for getting around. It's like sleeping on it without sleeping. So you can do it you can accomplish, you can correct your portraits much more quickly. Isn't that a cute dog? By the way, there was some conversation early on about painting fur. There's some chats and comments about how to paint fur. I'll just give you my 2 cents worth, so to speak. The answer is, how do you paint fur? And I'll correlate it to painting trees or any highly variegated, any highly textured, messy object. How do you paint it? The answer is not all at once. You paint it layers, layer by layer by layer. So this is at least the 4th time, maybe the 5th or the 6th time that I've tackled, if you will, the fur on this dog. And I don't know about you, but that looks quite furry to me. And again, the trick is many, many layers, many phases and stages, not all at once. And of course, if you follow me at all on YouTube or here lately, I've started broadcasting on Facebook too, then you know that that's the way I talk about painting foliage, trees, layer by layer by layer. It's so strange. It's a hard word to say fast because it sounds like you're saying layer, layer, layer. Like a trap. Layer, L-A-I-R. Anyway. Now before I leave Chewy, and I am just about done with him or her, just a few, the whole thing is soft, as you can tell. And I certainly want it to stay that way. I want Chewy soft. Of course, she's a ball of fur. I mean, what could she be but soft? But, well, what a less mature, forgive me, what an early journey painter might do is break out the tiny brush and start painting hairs. And in my opinion, that would be a dreadful mistake. Positively dreadful. Okay, perhaps I'm a little dramatic. Artistically dreadful. I don't know if anybody's even watching me. Is anybody watching me over here? No, not for the last 20 minutes anyway. I mean, somebody's watching. 10 people are watching, it says here, but nobody's saying anything. Nobody's saying nothing. You guys are sneaking in, stealth watchers, sneaking in. Nobody knows who I am. And you are welcome. Thank you for watching. Some of you are bored nearly to tears with this forced homeboundness. Boy, aren't we living in fascinating times? My goodness, just when you thought things couldn't possibly get more interesting, bam! Things are a whole lot more interesting. Wow. Speaking of which, I'll stick my foot out there a little bit. One of the things that we did and are doing, we'll probably do again this Sunday, is we had church in our driveway. Now, church is a pretty informal operation. I'm a musician. My daughter is a fabulously gifted singer and worship leader. So we just set up my sound system, my instruments, and we just invited our neighbors to come with their lawn chair and sit in our front yard. And a few did. We had a great time. And if we're still on lockdown this Sunday, we'll do it again. I considered even broadcasting. Of course, that for a lot of you, that would trigger you. So you're uncomfortable with any acknowledgement of invisible realities, even though you live your life. See, I can't help myself, can I? Even though you live your life, 90% of your concerns are with invisible realities. Love, honesty, courage, boldness, industry, blah, blah, blah. All those are invisibilities. And yet in our current official philosophical worldview, we don't like to acknowledge such things very much. Anyway, okay, I'm already in trouble with some of you, but sorry. Anyway, we might broadcast this next Sunday if we do driveway church again. It's just one of the little things we can do. So we did it. All right, I think I'm fiddling now. A little bit of white, sure. Let's do just a little bit more white highlight. It begs the question again. It brings up the topic, which I talk about often. How do you paint white stuff? Early journey painters. How do you paint white stuff? An early journey painter will typically reach for the bucket, quote unquote, of white paint and start slapping it down. And that is a gross error. The smart aleck way of saying is, how do you paint white stuff? And the answer is by not using white paint. Okay, so there's some real white on this dog, but there's actually literally no white paint on the canvas at the moment, and there still isn't right now. What I'm doing right now is very pale yellow, has this titanium white has a little bit of Naples yellow in it, so it's a warm white. But even so, it's only here at the very, very end of the painting process that I'm putting anything down. Look at this, I love this blue here. Where'd that come from? It came from seeing it right there. Of course, I exaggerated a little bit. That's not only my right privilege, it's my responsibility as an artist to help non-artists see things that they would otherwise miss. I don't know if you caught that or not. Let me say that again. That is one of our responsibilities as artists to the rest of humanity. I don't know if you know this or not. It took me a long time to admit this myself, that artists are more sensitive, literally more sensitive than the rest of the population visually. It's part of it. That's why you are an artist, because you see things that they literally do not see. And I remember very clearly, I have, what's the word? Tactile is not the word, but I have experience, keen experience of this when I was a child. When I was a kid, we had this artist who came to our church for a week, and he did chalk art. And it turns out, now he just died a few years ago at age 90 something, and he was active well into his late 80s and even 90s. Ding Tooling was his name. You can look him up. Ding Tooling, T-E-U-L-I-N-G. Anyway, he was very good, truly very good. Even though that art form is often in the purvey of hackers and hucksters and kind of leftover vaudeville. This guy was a professional. He was very good. Anyway, because I was 9 years old, because I was sitting on the front row, leaning forward every stroke, he did, sort of Bob Ross-ish type beautiful scenes. Then we turned on the black light at the end, a picture of Noah's Ark or Jesus on the cross, or Abraham and Isaac would appear in the black light. And he was very good. He really was. I'm saying that now as an adult. But the impact of me staring the daylights out of his art was that for years afterwards, when I would see a particular kind of tree, my little memory bank would fire, would go, ooh, look, a Ding Tooling tree. Because he had opened my eyes to see things that as a 9-year-old I hadn't seen yet. I would have seen them eventually, but anyway, so that is what, in fact, in my opinion, one of the services that artists render to the rest of non-seeing humanity who doesn't see what we see, is we can help them. Let me give you a close-to-home example. As you know, most of my paintings are cityscapes, so I'm literally painting on the street more often than anywhere. And in fact, this has become a bit of a joke among my old-time viewers. I'll be painting in downtown Raleigh and doing a scene of downtown Raleigh, and on more than one occasion I've had someone come by, a pedestrian come by, and look at my painting and say, oh, that is beautiful. Is that Paris? Now, it's not because I was doing a bad painting of the street. Please understand, no, my painting was a dead ringer for the street that I was standing on. But what I was doing was actually helping people to see the literal beauty that literally is in their hometown, but they are downcast of vision, and I don't just mean depressed, but I mean literally people don't look up and visually absorb the beauty of the world around them. And that's a very literal example of how it's my job, and a quote-unquote job, to help people see the beauty of their city. Of course, I do the same thing in many other cities as well, and often receive a very similar response. It's like, oh, that is so beautiful. And they'll say, you make it look better than it really is. And in a way, that's true. In a way, I do make it look better than this, but in a much truer way, my feeble little attempts at painting cityscapes really can't hold a candle to the actual beauty that is actually there. Does that make sense? But people literally can't see the beauty. Again, because they don't have the capacity. Their brain is not wired the same as mine. But I can indeed help them, and I imagine that many times, after they've seen their city through my eyes, then they see their city better. So there you go. Isn't that interesting? All right, I like my dog. Do you? If you don't, keep it to yourself. I'm happy to have another pet portrait. I have a few of those, few pet portraits on my website, but not very many. So glad to have another one. All right, now I'll just keep droning on, gang, because some of y'all are just. By the way, my eyes just fell on this little guy. My eyes just fell down on that guy that I just worked out a little ago. And I go, whoa! Already my portrait blindness is wearing off, and I see a whole bunch of, mostly in the realm of values, a whole bunch of things I want to change on that painting, but now's not the time. I'll come back to it later. So again, the point being, this trick of doing several portraits at one time really does work, because I already just saw that through fresh eyes and went, whoa, my goodness, what was I thinking? Which, that's the way I want to. That's the way I want to. That's the way I want to respond to my paintings if they're not perfect yet. I better be saying, whoa, what was I thinking? Right? That's better than the alternative. I need a little bit of work on my easel there. I need to weld that little thing. The dial that was here broke. That's one of the besetting problems with this art supplies made. Forgive me, made in China. We will not say anything bad about art supplies made about China, but art supplies I find often do not stand up to the rigors of vigorous work. I'll say that. I won't say anything more offensive. All right, this is Kim. Hang on just a second. I'm going to trim this photograph. Paper cutter over here. You recognize that sound? Whack, 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 whack. Paper cutter. Guess I'll just put that there. Okay, so there's the reverse image, and here is the forward image. I think I can take that right there. Good. Now, I of the 5 portraits that I've done in the last several days, I'm happiest with this one so far, and I did not use any cheater method on this whatsoever. I'm kind of bragging here a little bit. I'm not that good, but and I like the energy in this portrait best too. It's not overworked like my baby portraits are. My baby portraits, my client will be happy because they're photographic, okay? But and also the bride, because she's so small, she's overworked as well. This is the best of my portraits so far, in my opinion, because there's energy in the brushstrokes. There's very little or no depth control grip on this. And I have yet to get to the background, which I love. The background is going to be a lot of fun, but look, we need to finish this. Now, a little bit of whatever explanation. It's possible that part of the reason this is the best one is because I know Kim. She's a dear friend of our family, and I know what she looks like. In fact, the photograph she sent me is really not very complimentary of her at all. She's an attractive woman, and you can almost see that here, but no. So I do think generally it's easier to do a portrait of somebody that you know. And at the moment, this almost looks more, to me, it looks more like her than this does. So that's a real rare treat. So I don't want to mess up. But let's look at let's focus on this and see. Yeah, something bothers me about this light on her lip. Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, it's simply this side of it is simply too stark, too sharp. So that's an easy fix. I'm going to guess that the color right now is on my brush is close enough. There we go. Now what else? I keep adding, well, this is not a good reflection, is it? I keep adding more pink to this. I think I could, this is pretty realistic. I think I might be able to push that pink just a tiny bit. Let's see what else. Oh, yeah. I've got a line here in the nose. It just goes the wrong way. There we go. Hey, this would be a good time to talk about a principle. The baby's faces, this is really true. But if you understand something, that when light hits flesh, especially fleshy flesh, like a cheek, some of the light bounces off the surface, and you get a, like a light on a baseball, light, shadow, core shadow, secondary light, you get a complete gradation like this. That is not true of flesh, because something else happens with flesh, and that is the sunlight, in this case, goes into the flesh itself and illumines it. And I tried to do this the other day, and my little flashlight didn't work. Let me try again and see if it's going to work today, because this is, if you understand why things, oh good, if you understand why things do the way they do, you're more likely to see better. Oh, there we go. All right. Can you, there we go. Oh, come on. There we go. Oh, hang on. There we go. That's what I'm trying to show you, right? We all did this as kids, right? That's light going into my flesh and illuminating it from the inside, if you will. And you did that as kids with a flashlight in your mouth, in your nose, all that kind of stuff, right? That principle is happening here. And you need to understand that besides just the reflected light on flesh, you get that in combination with the illuminated light that's coming through the flesh. The effect is, and this photograph doesn't really do it justice, but in the painting I'm going to try to, the effect is that in the boundary between where the light is hitting the flesh and the shadow side, in the boundary between light and shadow is color, is red. So there's like along all, like right there, do you see it's light, red, shadow, light, red, shadow, light, red, shadow, light, red. In the boundary between those two is where we get the most illumination. Finger, light, red, shadow. Okay, now if you just have extraordinary powers of observation, of course you would see this eventually. But this is one of those tricks that if you know the trick, you're more likely to see it more quickly. And as somebody said just a little while ago in their comments, that you want most of these things to become second nature, so you're not, in a sense, burning up unnecessary energy, focusing on things, because you see it in a flash, and then you move on to other things. So that, again, that's part of, I'm going to do a little bit of just what I'm talking about. And I'm looking at the photograph saying, is it there? Oh yeah, it is. It is. Now, of course, am I exaggerating it? maybe. But is it a lousy photograph? Yes. So, anyway? So I'm making I certainly hope to make the painting better than the photograph. And I feel like to a large extent, I have achieved that already. All right, anything else in here now that bothers me? No, not really. I'm quite happy with, and I'm glad to say in the mirror image, I'm also happy with how her eyes look. I invented some marks here that are not really indicated in the photograph, but they're coming across fairly well in the painting. All right, give me just a minute. I'm going to clean up 3 of these brushes. And I wish I had the habit and the discipline that Mark Carter has of not using solid clean brushes. Maybe I'll do that someday, but at the moment I just feel like it's too much old dog, new tricks. I just can't get used to his system, which I admire, but don't seem to be able to do. He never rinses his brushes. All right, anybody making a chat I should see? Hello, Steve. Oh, good. Glad to hear it's far from boring. That encourages me. I appreciate that. Travis, you'd watch my front yard worship. All right, good for you, man. Well, as I said, I had honestly hoped to broadcast last week, but I ended up with not quite enough time. It took me an hour and a half to set up all the equipment, which I do gladly. By the way, I said often, if the setup isn't, if you're not in a spirit of worship while you're setting up, then you've missed something. You're probably doing something out of your own sense of something. So anyway, I enjoy it so much I don't even mind setting up. All right, let's do. I think I can get rid of this now. Happy. That's wonderful. That makes me feel good. I can't wait to get to work on this. On the background of this painting. This is the most fun background of all. I love painting American flags because I live in America, because I'm an American citizen. I've painted an awful lot of American flags and have developed a little formula for doing so. All formulas are dangerous because if you paint by formula, then you're not seeing very well. But if you don't have any formulas, you're not very efficient. It's taking you forever to paint things. So there's a real fine balance between formulaic painting, if I can call it that, of any kind. It's good to have a formula. Good to bust out of it occasionally. I don't want to ruin this painting by getting tight and overworked. So I do want to watch out for that. But we can use a little more definition in the hair, which is what I'm doing right now. By the way, speaking of formulas, here's one. Again, it's good to have a formula, and then it's good to break out of them. But if you don't have a formula, you're spending way too much time doing everything because you're having to reinvent the wheel every time you turn around, and that's just woo. So a formula for painting, I already used this word a little while ago, but now with a slightly different application. Anytime you're painting a highly variegated, that means textured, busy subject matter. Anytime you're painting a highly variegated surface, object, texture, here is a formula. First of all, you paint mid-tone pretty much over the whole thing. Now that's already done. I've already got that done here. So I'm not demonstrating that at the moment. Then, what I am doing now is you follow up next by doing dark values. For instance, this applies to big time to foliage, clouds, grass, trees. These are all busy things. Skin, flesh, hair, which you see me doing, fur. I did this on the dog a little while ago, I just didn't talk about it. So mid-tone over the whole, now I'm painting in layers and layers and layers, so the mid-tone here is already done. Mid-tone first, dark tone, if you will, dark second, and highlights third. And then if you want to be more realistic, then you repeat that pattern. So that's what I did on the dog. I told you that that was probably my fourth go round, fourth layer, fifth layer, sixth layer on the dog. Likewise on Kim's hair, this is my third or fourth layer on her hair. By the way, I'm using this brush. It has a little bit of liquid on it just to soften some of the lines that I just put down there. Now, before I leave this, I'm going to see, is there any place in her face where I really need a little bit more dark details? And I think there is right here. Again, I'm looking at the photograph here, that's all. In the photograph, this is much darker, but that's a camera, what's the word I'm looking for? A leftover skeleton fossil of something that used to be good, but now it's left over, and it's artifact. There we go. The darkness of this is a camera, is a photography. That's a good word. That's a photographic artifact. It's a product of this. Camera does this. Lights are too light, darks are too dark. Same thing here. In this part of her hair, I'm going to make this dark right here because it's the back of her coat. But I don't necessarily need or want to go as dark. I'm glad I remembered that word. That is a great word. I should use it more when we're painting. We should use it more when we're painting from photographs. Learn to discern the counterproductive artifacts of photography. Now, and when I say this, of course, there are, of course, good photographers among us, of which I am not one. Every once in a while I take a good photograph, but for the most part I'm like, no, I'm a little better than the average photographer. No. That is not what I'm a little better than the average snap shooter, which is what photographers call people who are terrible. I'm a little better because I know about composition, I know about right, all that kind of stuff. But still, anytime I look at a really good photographer, which is always great fun, my jaw drops open. I go, golly, they are seeing and doing stuff I can't even dream of doing. I looked at one just the other day. I met a man back in December, and he invited me to give him a call. I need to do that. His name is Ken Austin. So you want to look up Ken Austin. I think it's Ken Austin, National Geographic photographer. Because I found another Ken Austin who was an amateur. But anyway, I looked at the one of which I'm speaking, the one that worked for National Geographic. It's the joy. What I'm experiencing it now, and what I'm reflecting is the joy of craftsmanship, of expertise. That is something beautiful. Every form of expertise in human experience is beautiful. And that reminds me of another rant that I thought about giving today. I don't usually pre-plan my rants, believe me, you can tell. But a couple days ago, when I was broadcasting, a new viewer, that's all I remember, it was somebody who hadn't chatted with us before, left a really sweet, ooh, that's nice, oh my goodness. Kim just came a little bit alive there. I had a little bit of more orangish brown, very much like a oxide red on my brushes, and her face just got warmed up. Thank you, Lord. That's a happy mistake right there. Anyway, this viewer said something like, I'm a new painter or new artist, but I would like help in being creative and figuring out what to draw or paint. All right, so I responded to them briefly, But I want to respond to you guys more, and I doubt that person is listening. I can't remember who his name was. If you do catch this, feel free to leave a chat and comment, and especially correct me if I've misrepresented you in any way. But a very good question, very typical question. But it reminded me of one of the chapters in my in my book. Okay, I have 2 books, ladies and gentlemen, that are languishing in the land of non-publication. Well, it's because they're not in a state of being ready for publication yet. But anyway, 2 separate books. So one of them is about modern art, and here I'm using the term the way a layperson would, not the way an academic would, because an academic would draw many distinctions between modern specific and so on and so forth. And so I'm using in this case I don't know what the title of the book would be, but I really am trying to explain essentially the world of contemporary, not temporary. I said the word temporary. Maybe it's a Freudian slip. Of temporary 20th century art movements, and because 98% of the 99 perhaps percent of the population has no idea what to do when they walk into the art museum. They have no idea what they're looking at, and I would like to address that. And in a word, it will neither be a love fest nor a slug fest. Ooh, I've never said that before that way. That's a good way to put it. It's not going to be a diatribe against modern art, but neither is it going to be what I got in college, which was unmitigated orgasmic ecstasy in the presence of every. Forgive me for being slightly crude, but I like the picture that it really does. That describes my art history professors pretty much, as they were going through every movement of the 20th century, was virtually orgasmic praise for each and every movement. And my book is not going to be that either. I hope it to be a level-headed. Anyway, it's about 400 pages long at the moment, and it's still very much. Anyway, one of the chapters would have to do with hierarchy of values in the art world, and specifically with regard to 3 aspects of art. And those 3 aspects are self-expression, creativity, and craftsmanship. Okay, now it's real easy for me, anyway. It's real, and I think everyone will agree with me who knows the subject. Real easy to tell you what order those 3 values, those 3 elements, issues, how they panned out in the 20th century. I'll jump to it so you'll catch on real quickly. The 20th century, by and large, valued self-expression above everything else. Self-expression was the highest of those 3 values. It was more important than an artist express him or herself than just about anything else in art. And again, this would go under the very benign sounding statement. The benign sounding statement is this: after all, art is communication. That is most aficionados, fans of 20th century art movements would concur with that statement. After all, and I'll expand a little bit, after all, art is essentially nothing more than communication. And it sounds so benign. It sounds like, well, duh, yeah. How can you argue with that? But as a matter of fact, I plan to argue with that quite vociferously, and I hope intelligently, because I disagree with it vehemently. There's enough adjectives for you? No, I mean adverbs for you. So in the 20th century, of those 3, self-expression, creativity, and craftsmanship, self-expression was quite far and away the highest given the highest position. Okay? In the 20th century, then which one came in second? Again, this is quite obvious and easy, in my opinion, to ascertain and to convey. In the 20th century, creativity was regarded as the next most important of those three. And then thirdly is craftsmanship. Okay? So in the art movements of the 20th century, by and large, self-expression was exalted to the prime position. Creativity was given a very high value, and craftsmanship very little or no, or sometimes even a detrimental stroke against the artist if he or she demonstrated a high degree of craftsmanship. Now, not in every movement, but in most movements, it is safe to say that's true. All right, so I know you know that I'm about to give you my contrary opinion. And again, please understand that by making this contrary opinion, please understand that I understand. I'm not doing this with a high degree of naivete. Please understand that I'm going against virtually every art professor in every university in the Western world for the last 100 years. Now, if that doesn't, if you don't go, golly, ballsy, Mr. Nelson. Yep. So what on earth makes me have the gall? Now, first of all, it's not every art professor, but virtually every art professor in the Western world in the last. Who on earth do I think I am? Well, that's a very good question. It's hard to answer. First of all, I'm a bit of a fairly serious hobby historian. I make no pretense about like being a professional, but I'm a strong enough hobby historian to actually argue with most of the history professors. It's you and me against the world, baby. And I am even more serious, a philosopher historian. Now, again, and again, so I've had many comments over the years. All right, shut up, Nelson. You're a good painter. You should stick to painting. Well, that may very well be true, but usually it's coming from people who are abysmally less well-informed than I am. So no, I don't take their comments very seriously. I am, in my own opinion, my opinion might be wrong. My self-evaluation might be wrong. Goodness knows I've been wrong about myself many times throughout my life. But in my opinion, I am a philosopher who paints rather than a painter who philosophizes. And again, I quick to add, I might be wrong about that, but so far that's a considered a thing. My master's degree, if you will, is in philosophy and history, not art at all. Bachelor's degree is in art, so I think that's a fair reflection. Some of you are going to go do some research and say, oh, come on, your degree's from a seminary. And I'll rest my case and say, yep. And it was mostly philosophy and history. But I am not what I am because of my degrees. Au contraire. I am not what I am because of my degrees. I have degrees that I have because of what I am. So I had this predilection before I earned any kind of degree in philosophy and history. Be that as it may. So let me go back to, so what gives me the gall to go against all the art professors? Well, again, because of my sense of history, I think I know why. Now, not with a judgmental heart or attitude, but I think I know why most of them adopted the philosophy they did, and it was because that they were children of their products of their time. And so without rancor, malice, or harsh judgment, I can look back at the movements of the 20th century and say, I understand that. I understand it way better than they did when they were going through it. Anyway, and I, in a sense, celebrate all the junk we went through in the 20th century, but I also feel like I have the perspective to say, okay, it's done now. We've done it. We have learned that the canvas is flat. We've learned all about self-expression, so on, so on, and so on, a whole bunch of other stuff. Anyway, so let me hasten. I'm rambling on like I don't know what. Here's what I think is the truth. Here's my hierarchy, and it won't surprise you a great deal at all, probably, if you follow me at all. But it's exactly the reverse of the values of the 20th century. That I believe that the highest value is craftsmanship. The second highest in this threesome, in this triumvirate, the second highest is creativity. And the very lowest form, the lowest value of all is self-expression. That is such a shocking statement to most people because they are in fact product of 20th century. I'll use an alarmist, horrible term, say propaganda. But essentially, people believe that because that's what they've been taught, because that's what they've been taught, because that's what they've been taught, because that's what they've been taught. But in fact, the whole notion of art as self-expression can basically be encapsulated inside the experience of the 20th century, most especially the Armory Show, New York City, 1907 or 1913, all of a sudden. But anyway, one of those two dates. And there was the abstract expressionist show in New York City in the Armory at a very specific date. I think it was 1907. You could mark that. There are very few movements in art history that you could put a date on. You know, it started on, June 2nd or something like that. But this one you can. The abstract expressionist explosion, if you will, or a revolution in the mind of the art world can be dated to the Armory Show in New York City in, forgive me, I'm not looking it up. I think it was 1907. So most people would be surprised just to hear that. Doesn't mean that I'm right or that they're wrong, but when you discover that such and such a mindset can be dated to a very specific event, it should at least give you pause, right? It should make you go, oh, really? Wow, I didn't know that. Yes, for millennia, human beings did art of all different sorts. Somebody created the Sphinx. Somebody did King Tut's tomb. Somebody did the cave paintings of Lascaux, France, going back 50,000 years. All those artists did all this stuff. Not one of them, I'll boldly say, not one of them gave the slightest thought toward self-expression. I mean, it's laughable to suggest that the builder of the Sphinx was trying to express him or herself. I mean, I don't know if you know that it's laughable, but it is. But this notion that art is about self-expression is so ubiquitous, so universally assumed in our culture. I remember one time years ago when I was a freelance illustrator, I was called upon to do some kind of illustration. I can't remember what it was exactly, but anyway, it was a colorful illustration, and there was something that my client didn't like about it. It seems to me, though, like there was a color, like he had said, oh no, did you forget that and it might have been something that I forgot like that. Do you remember that I asked you to do such and such, make sure you had a lot of such and such color in it, or something like that? It was one of those like mildly embarrassing, like, whoops, yep, sorry. But my client, who was not an artist and not an art director, he was like a city bureaucrat, a person that I was doing work for the city, I do remember that, or some club in the city or something. Anyway, and he said something like, now, I know that you might feel like you have to express yourself by using this or that color. He actually said this to me. He actually said it to me. And it was all I could do on this end of the phone not to bust out laughing out loud. I mean, the ignorance is so deep, so utterly ignorant, that he thought as an illustrator that I was expressing myself. Anyway, not to pick on somebody who's ignorant, but that just is a reflection of how utterly pervasive this erroneous notion is in our broader culture. Most people think. I remember another moment comes to mind. I was listening to NPR. I used to be quite the NPR junkie. That was before they, anyway, never mind, before they went some direction quite so radically. And I was listening to a documentary that they were doing about the artists of, I almost remember the country. It's a country in Africa, and forgive me, it'll come back to me in a minute, but it's a small little sliver of a country right up against the Red Sea in the upper right-hand corner of Africa. Maybe where the pirates are from. Where are all the pirates from? And, you know, famous pirates in recent history. Anyway, and they were doing a documentary about artists in this tribe, in this nation. And hello, Sketch Art by Mark. Glad to have you on board. Thanks for making a comment. Anyway, and the commentator, the person who was putting together the documentary for NPR, it was being broadcast on NPR, said something like, almost I'll imitate it, it almost with a cry in their voice. And these artists, they need to get their message out. Do you hear that? And again, now this time there was no reason for me not to bust out laughing out loud, so I did, just like you hear me laughing right now. Utterly, philosophically, historically, and artistically, ignorantly absurd. Just absurd beyond description. And these artists, these poor artists, they need to get their message out. Like, says who? Only says people that are so swept up in a little moment of history. They have no idea how provincial they're being, how narrow, limited. Oh my goodness. Anyway, and then a third experience. And this goes back to 2007. I was having coffee up in Michigan, having lunch with one of my dear childhood friends. He was 2 years older than me, and he was, being a 2 year older than me child, he was always one of my heroes. And in fact, he grew up to be, like me, an artist. A very, very, very different kind of artist from me. And we're sitting down over, and he knew he and I had kind of landed in different places in our art. And he said he had been a professor at some art schools. And he said, you know, well, after all, you know, art is communication or something. He says, well, I just believe art is communication. And I just kind of swallowed my duck soup. I'm kidding, I was not eating duck soup. I just smiled and I didn't want to get into, you know, loggerheads with my old friend who I hadn't seen in years and years and years there on the spot. But that he was an art professor, and he was reflecting the mantras of his culture. Anyway, so no, as you can tell, I'm not even, so no, and again, in my book, I go on to some length. Is, in fact, an artist reflected in their artwork? Absolutely. Is an artist's worldview reflected in, if they're any good, yes, their worldview is reflected in their artwork. But that's a far cry from an artist trying to reflect their worldview in their artwork, which I think is a violation of the responsibility, the role of the artist. It's actually a violation, not just like a mistake. Well, you can do it if you want to. Not in my opinion. You can't even do it if you want to. It is a red card in soccer. It's out of here. Creativity is of some value, but it's by no means the highest value. So that leaves, of course, as I've already said, I believe craftsmanship is the highest value. Now, of course, again, and I'm not going to try to spend hours defending this proposition, this thesis. I do in the book. Like I said, it's running to 400 pages already. But craftsmanship by itself will always do all the other things that the artists are after. And if I may, just not from so much a philosophical, but for a personal psychological health point of view, skill ascertained creates emotional health. Let me say that again. Skill accomplished goes a great way toward engendering personal internal health. Let me give you just a classic example of that. I sit back and I look at this painting, I look at this photograph, and I won't do it, but I won't do it on camera, but I can fold my arms, cock my head to one side, and in a sense say, damn. I hope my mom's not listening. Damn. I'm good. No, I'm not. You've heard me be humble a whole bunch today. I am no John Singer Sargent, and there's 1,000 maybe artists in America who can run circles around me. Doesn't matter. I know. I'm not trying to pretend I'm better than I am. I just kind of know where I fit in, and there's a definite part of me that says, and by the way, it's very much mixed with, yeah, but I want to be a lot better. Okay, so that's a mitigating impulse, you know. I don't have some kind of, whatever, over-evaluation of where I fit in. I don't think at all. But I am happy. This makes me happy. Being able to do this gives me self-respect, self-satisfaction, not in competition with anybody else, just in, am I better today than I was yesterday? Kind of internally, not in competition. And if I could steer any young artists in any direction, it would be in that direction. First of all, get the heck out of self-expressionville. Run for your life and develop skill. Your authentic self will be reflected in your artwork. And again, in my book, I go to some length describing exactly how that works, but I won't do that here. But anyway, just for what it's worth, no, forget this. Don't even worry about creativity. So I recommended to this young person who commented last week or 2 weeks ago. I said, just don't try to be creative. Just paint anything, stupid stuff. Paint, a spool of thread. Paint your left thumb. Paint your old shoes. There's a classic, right? There's a classic art trope, motif. Paint a pair of old boots. Paint a wastebasket. Just no, don't try to be creative. Don't even think, don't waste energy trying to be creative. Develop skill, man. Develop skill. Skill is what will make you happy. Skill is what will set you apart from the tribe. And again, this is not a like skill and competence. I just made a comparative statement, so forgive me. But because that could be discouraging for older painters who are just doing this for fun. I completely affirm and bless your journey of painting for fun. An absolutely noble endeavor. You, however, understand, don't you? You wouldn't be watching me probably if you didn't want to get better. Because there is a real intrinsic and authentic pleasure that comes from getting better. You know it's true, otherwise why would you be taking lessons? Oh, wonderful, thank you. Lunch served. Oh, it's 3 o'clock, my goodness. Y'all, I drone on for hours, don't I? Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of detail on Kim's clothing here, not much. I'll come back and do more later. I need to get to the other baby boy painting. And you know what? I think what I'll do is I'll take a break here in a minute. I will eat some lunch without me smacking in your ear. And at the same time, we're going to try to recover our Facebook stream and hope that it works better than it did last time. We just simply lost the stream a little while ago because that's what streams do. And after that, then I run into technical problems where the two cameras are trying to talk to the two phones, and they get tangled up between each other, which phone is talking to which camera, and so forth. So, all right. So that's a good place to end right there. Thank you, guys. Got a dozen people watching right now. Yes, scores and scores, thousands of people watch me. Whoa! And that's what I get for being a smart aleck. All right. Thank you very much. Let me see if there's any chats I need to see. Thank you, Uncle. The portrait looks better than the photograph. I think it's all. Yeah, it looks like a firefighter woman, doesn't it? No, she's running for office here, and she won her primary a couple weeks ago. And she's a real spitfire. She's a real fireball. I like her a lot. And she's very unconventional in her political tactics, strategies, whatever. She's Republican, but I tell you, when she talks, she interfaces more with the other side of the aisle, literally, than any politician I know. I mean, she creates waves, literally creates scandalous waves because of her willingness to dialogue with both sides, and I, of course, respect that very highly. We need a whole lot more people like her. Very unconventional and very, very gifted. So here she is making a speech with a microphone and a flag behind her. And evidently this is going to be a gift for her husband, so that's kind of cool. All right, thanks y'all for watching. I hope to be back in a little while. And again, with our Facebook friends in tow. Appreciate you guys hanging in there all this time. Bye-bye. Hello, Michael. Goodbye, Michael.